Good morning on the Spotlight stage. Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence. Exciting AI topic here today at CoMotion LA. Thanks, everybody, for coming. My name is Amy Scarton. I'm a vice president at HNTB. I sit in our Seattle office, and we have a great series of folks here from both Seattle and Los Angeles here to talk to you about how they are integrating AI in their transportation agencies. So we're going to hear, what are they excited about? What projects, pilot projects or full-scale implementations, are they using AI to bring about change in their agency? We're going to hear, what risks does AI potentially bring? What might it solve? Importantly, what might it not solve? We hope to hear from you in the audience, so think of all your fun AI questions. We'll get to those at the end. And while I am not going to introduce each of the panelists, they are going to introduce themselves. I will tell you one fun fact about them. And I know it is loud here, and we're competing with the workshops. So if we're not loud enough, let us know. Kevin will use his football coach voice. Randy, she will use her NASA landing a rover on Mars voice. And Janice, if she has to, she is going to use her I'm arguing a bill on the State House floor voice. All right? So that's a little teaser about each of these amazing folks and their backgrounds. And so let's hear from them. Welcome, introduce yourselves.
Thank you, I'll start. Ooh, that's loud. All right, it's the coach's voice. All right, my name's Kevin Gray. I am Chief Technology Officer for the Southern California Regional Rail Authority, more commonly in the LA area known as Metrolink. I've been there a little over a year. I am what we call an industry and sector jumper. Prior to Metrolink, I was with the city of Burbank for about 6.5 years as their CIO. And prior to that, I had a 25-year career in media and entertainment across multiple companies. And prior to that, I was in aerospace.
Hi, good morning. I'm Randy Levin. I am the Chief Information Officer at Puget Sound Transit. I have been there 6 months. I moved there 4 months ago from LA, where I had been for a huge number of years. My last position was at the White House as a senior technology advisor to President Biden. Before that, I was at NASA's JPL here as the CIO and was responsible for the underlying technology to land on Mars. And I have a long tenure in IT. I was the CIO for the city of Los Angeles for 5 years. I'm an Angelino at heart. And I also worked in the entertainment industry. I think anybody who lives in LA at some point worked in the entertainment industry.
Well, good morning. My name is Janice Zahn. I did not work in the entertainment industry, but I will say that I currently serve part-time in the Washington State Legislature in the House, so maybe that is its own set of entertainment in the political realm. So I'm a civil structural engineer. My day job, I'm the chief engineer at the Port of Seattle. We own and operate SeaTac Airport, several cruise terminals, fishing piers, marinas. We also are part of the Northwest Seaport Alliance that has a number of container terminals in the ports of Seattle and Tacoma. Prior to serving in the state legislature, I served over 7 years in the city of Bellevue, Washington, in my city. And as part of that, I was on the National League of Cities Board of Directors and involved in their first AI working group, where we published a document of some guidance for cities, towns, and villages around the country around AI, kind of do's and don'ts, templates, case studies.
Thank you so much. So as you can see, a lot of experience up here on the stage, spanning state, local, federal, cities, private sector, and elected officials, all engaging in the AI space. And so let's start big picture question. How are you currently at your current agency either adopting AI? How are you using it in your everyday practices? Is there a particular pilot project that you want to tell the audience about?
Okay, I'll go first. So I've been in the job 6 months, and what I have noticed about our various modes is that we seem to have a lot of outages on some of our lines. And so one of my first questions was, how good is the asset data about what's out there in the network, in the tunnels, all of that? And everybody just didn't really chime in. Nobody said it's really good. And so it's really not any good. And every time we go out to repair something, because I have operational technology responsibility, they would find something else that we didn't know was there. And I'm not talking about a tree that grew. I'm talking about a communications closet that had to be built, that was there. And I said, you know what? By the time we get accurate inventory of what's out there, I'm going to be, 10,000 years old. So I said, what I'm going to do now is do an AI pilot, where every time we send a technician out, they're going to take pictures and videos of what's out there. And we can put it in an app too, and they can do that. But if they had done that, we wouldn't be in the shape that we're in right now. So I said, pictures, videos. So we're starting a pilot where we ingest all of that. And then it is spitting out like a bill of material, data for as-built diagrams, data for digital twin, and then we'll ingest that into our enterprise asset management system. But that's how we're going to fix this inventory problem. And at some point, we'll go out again and do a physical inventory of every single location, every switch, every router, every port, everything. But we're going to do these in concert with each other. And so, like right now, we're kind of double checking the results of the pilot. And I hope to put this in production at some point.
Great, thanks. So as a way to source the truth out of the data that you have and create a good data set.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and I also figured it can't be that hard for the technicians to take a picture or a video, and they can do it from their cell phone. If they can't do that, I give up. I don't know.
Kevin, you wanted to go?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add that the use of generative AI at Metrolink has really skyrocketed since we established our AI governance and use policy. And we implemented multiple training sessions for the entire agency, teaching staff how to best use generative AI and how to protect themselves from the potential pitfalls from generative AI. So we've seen it skyrocket. We're using it for marketing materials. Some use it to help with the writing of their emails, presentations, drafting of memos. We use it a lot for research because it can short circuit the time and effort that you need to spend researching items because the data is already there, in these chat agents. We're testing Gen AI agents for procurement and contract reviews now. So whereas our procurement and contract people sometimes have had to spend hours reviewing MSAs, reviewing contracts, and comparing them to the regulations and rules and policies and grant requirements, we're using AI to do that for them now, and it can be done in minutes, whereas it took, in some cases, weeks. We're using machine learning for video surveillance systems. We're using AI for rail and track maintenance programs to help us better optimize our rail maintenance. And in all of the forms of AI, I see it growing at Metrolink.
Thank you so much for that list. That was quite a set of use cases there. But you know what I love is you started with training. Yeah. I think that's a unifier here. Whether you're in the public sector, the private sector, it's training our teams and our staff on how to use this tool effectively in their jobs. Janice.
Yeah, interestingly enough, yesterday I feel like we finally came into our own at the Port of Seattle. What I mean by that is that our CEO or executive director has these periodic town halls. He talks about how the performance of the port is doing and HR talks and all these other departments. Well, for the very first time yesterday, our collaborative team between engineering and ICT talked about our digital twin efforts and how, as part of that pilot, we're leveraging AI and data and technology to make the invisible visible. And I share that because I feel like it's been a really long journey at the port. I've been there for 21 years, and I will say that a dozen years ago, we were trying to work on how do we get to a single source of truth, because I was overseeing construction management at the time, and how many of you are in the project delivery space? So how often do you see designers and contractors and the data being put in the same system? How many times do we share data so that we don't have people pointing fingers at each other about what the actual data and the truth is? So for the very first time, we have been using digital twin on one of our pilot projects at the airport where we're making the invisible visible. And a year ago, I will say, I don't wish this on anyone. We had a cyber attack on the Port of Seattle. They wanted a $6 million ransom that we refused to pay. So all of our systems went down. We had to rebuild everything. And so what that meant was we had an opportunity to actually pivot our construction management system to the exact same system that the surveyors and the designers use with the Autodesk product, ACC Cloud. That is transformational because, yes, I agree that training is important, culture is important, but the system that we use can be the one that is the activator for single source of truth, data, being able to harness AI so you're not trying to deal with, I'm learning new terms around data, right? Data hygiene of when you have multiple sources of truth, which one is the truth? So I start there because I do think that this journey over the years of how do we input photos and data and information into a single portal so that it can be harnessed by multiple people becomes the activator for us to be able to leverage AI. So we are piloting doing some constructability review with our construction management staff to test how well AI can pull the data from our design documents and look for constructability issues. And we're finding that actually it doesn't do too bad compared to our really seasoned inspectors that are doing that same work. So they can walk alongside to do some of that. We're also starting to pilot using some AI tools to look for risk in our contracts, in our construction contracts as well. We're looking at a pilot to be able to generate submittal logs directly from our construction documents. So that's on the construction side. Our designers are also starting to look at how that might be able to be used to pull some information from our standards and our codes. And then I can't help but bring up some things that the airport wanted me to share about some things that they're doing as well. So anybody that's been in the airport recently knows that the queuing around the checkpoints are horrible. So we have been using AI to pull data to better understand operational management. In that operation, we're using AI for understanding operations outside of the glass so that as you think about an airplane pulling in, it doesn't take failures from any one of the pieces, right? The food didn't show up on time, so now the truck for the food is sitting in the way of another piece of equipment coming in to load baggage. So those are some areas that we're trying to do around optimization with AI.
Great. Great. So many upsides of applying AI to the work of the airport, the seaport, the transit systems, and yet there are risks. There are risks inherent in adopting this technology for our employees, for the general public, for those that rely on our systems. What risks do you see? Tell us a little bit. How do you manage some of these risks? What concerns you? What do you think we'll get through?
Two risks that I'd like to speak about. The first one being that commonly folks in technology, we discover a new technology and we feel like it's going to change the world. It can fix everything, right? I describe it as suddenly every problem in the world becomes a nail, and now AI is the hammer.
You mean
right?
It's not solving everything?
It's not solving everything,
okay,
right?
Learn something new.
So you have these dichotomies. There's huge fear. People are afraid of it and want to avoid it. Then you have others that believe and they advocate that AI can solve everything. It really can't. But there are many, many great use cases for which it could be used to solve serious problems. The other risk that I see is really around privacy, because if you are using your data to train bots, if you're not doing it in the proper manner, you can be leaking data that's sensitive, or privacy data about others that could become a real problem. So those are the two things that I'd like to speak about.
Okay, so we heard data privacy, which let's jump into that next. And then this notion that it can solve everything. Randy, what other risks are you seeing?
I'm not going to talk about a technology risk. I'm going to talk about a people risk, because you all see in the media, when Elon Musk or one of those guys comes out and says half the workforce is going to be gone next week, and it's been in the news a lot. And people are kind of freaking out, in various groups about whether they'll have a job. And so I think, in my role, our roles, it's important, you spoke about education, the more we can educate our workforce on, what is this going to do for you, as opposed to, you're not going to have a job next week. The dialogue changes. And I've said to them, a couple of people, remember when Excel came out? I do. Okay.
Who remembers when Excel came out? Raise your hands. Okay, you're not alone. You're not alone.
People sort of had the same reaction. Or when TurboTax came out, with their online thing. And what are accountants going to do? Oh my God, we'll never need accountants. So, we can draw from history, in terms of how technology has helped, but it doesn't mean that you are irrelevant.
So morale, risks to morale, extremely important. Janice, other risks?
Yeah, I would say that I would add to that the concern with disparity. So what we see is just like when the cell phone came out, who had access to the cell phone, where you were able to be more efficient and effective out in the field, to be able to share information, call back home, versus the people that don't. So I think that societally, one of our concerns is how do we make sure we don't create continual disparity between people that are able to get training in AI and help them do their job better, and the ones that don't. And we're going to see this continual disparity if we're not really careful about that. The other thing that we are concerned about is, as we rely more on software and the software is using AI, what kind of programming is in the AI, and where are those biases that are in the software that we're buying? How will we know? Are there disclosures of what kind of training data they're using for that, so that we understand what risk we take on when we make a choice to use a certain piece of software in the work that we do? I think that is a really important piece that I don't think we're necessarily talking about it enough related to that risk.
So bias and disparity. So how are you solving for any of these risks that you mentioned? How are you solving for them? Can AI help solve for any of the risks it creates? Do we train for it? How are we working on morale in this space? How are we working on the equity pieces that you mentioned?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with this one. You know, when I was on that work group related to AI at the National League of Cities, I learned about the GovAI Coalition. And if you're not familiar with that, they have over, I want to say 400 or 500 public agencies that are part of that. It started with the city of San Jose. And what I think is really great about that resource that is free, anyone can be a member, and it has a lot of case studies, it has templates, it has things to look out for. And I think that in this space, the more that we share across with each other about what we're finding works or doesn't work, it becomes less of the individual buyer beware, but more of collectively, we are going to get better at identifying, oh, we found this, let's make sure someone else doesn't fall in the rabbit hole, and that we're able to share that knowledge with each other. Because I will say the other risk I didn't bring up that we are also talking about is it's one thing to say, here's an AI, it's been trained with this large language model group of data, and it's giving you information just based on that data, versus the agentic AI that we're hearing is going to make automatic decisions on our behalf. That to me is frightening, because when we think about what might get decided on our behalf without our knowledge, I think that is a huge risk that we need to figure out collectively what that means for us.
So I really heard collaboration, right, as one of the ways to solve for the risks. It's collaboration for the benefit of everyone. Other ideas here?
Well, the first thing I want to do is second what Janice just said about the GovAI Coalition. So,
GovAI Coalition. Got
GovAI
it. Okay.
Coalition. When I was with the city of Burbank, we were one of the founding members. And
You got to talk closer.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Coach voice.
So, what I was trying to say is I wanted to second what Janice was saying about the GovAI Coalition. So when I was with the city of Burbank, we were one of the founding members. We actually contributed and gained a lot from our work on governance and policy around AI. And so our language and our policy around responsible use of AI came directly from the work that we did with the GovAI Coalition. So I would say for any of our fellow public sector members out there, if you are not members of the GovAI Coalition, please do. In fact, they're having their conference in just a few weeks. So I won't be able to make it there. So I want to second that. And I think I wanted to say something about responsible use of AI. Having a strong policy in place, taking the time to write that policy and educate your staff on the policy is very, very important. It really, really helps mitigate a lot of the risk. People are still going to make mistakes, so you got to have other things in place to help mitigate that risk. But I think really strong policy and training and teaching people will help tremendously.
And I'll go back to the morale issue. I think it's about education and communication, and really getting people to understand this is a tool, another tool in your toolbox, and giving examples of it. A couple of months ago, my son does AI for Meta on the infrastructure side, and my daughter is getting her master's in school psychology, and the two of them got into it at the dinner table, because my son said, we're not going to need your psychologists anymore because AI is going to diagnose and fix everybody's problem.
Going to solve everything.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And she turned around and she said, hey, Adam, you're so stupid. People are not going to want to tell their deepest, darkest secrets to a bot. And I just said, can we eat dinner, please, in peace? So even very educated people, are going at it about how, this is all going to work. So I I think that the more we can give very good examples of how it's going to help you, how it's a tool, how it's going to improve the work that you're doing. Yeah, there may be some jobs that go away. We've seen this. Look, when we put in ERP systems, we saw some jobs go away. Data entry clerks, We've seen these cycles many times. There are risks here. And so,
Right.
I'm not going to pretend that there aren't, that there's some jobs that may go away. But I think, at least for where we are right now in the evolution of AI, it's another tool.
And when you use that phrase, tool in the toolbox, I think of how many times have we told our staff, our companies, our agencies to adopt one more tool? And 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, is it still in the toolbox? And so are we at a place now with AI or alt technology? How do we separate out the fads from what will be truly transformative? And speak to that a bit. Are there ways in the AI space and the technology space, where are we here? Fad, transformative?
Oh, it's definitely transformative. But there's just myths about it too. At NASA, we were doing AI for 50 years, but it wasn't generative AI. And so that's the real tipping point, in terms of making it mass market, if you want to call it that. So again, education. I keep coming back to that because people don't know what it can do. And it is another tool. And I would love to eventually get rid of Teams. Am I allowed to say that? Can I say that here?
What says at CoMotion can stay at CoMotion, maybe?
Yeah, cause commotion, right?
Cause commotion.
But, I would love to reduce our portfolio of tools. And I think it's coming, and when all of us look at how many tools we have at work, DocuSign, Adobe, we could just go down the list. I think this is going to help productivity and actually consolidate some of that, which will be really, really great.
I want to add, it can be difficult for us in technology to distinguish between fads and transformative new technologies because we have so many fads. But I would say the easiest way to tell the difference between a fad and a transformative technology is in its business application. Can it be applied to solve business problems? So does anybody here remember when blockchain was going to change the world just a couple years ago, right? Yeah, well, it didn't. And the reason why is because the business applications were limited. It's found its space in cryptocurrency, but really the business applications are very limited. With AI, that's different because there are lots of business applications. And so that's why I say today, it is not a fad. It is transformative. It's already transformative. Now, I think we often overestimate the impact of a technology and we underestimate the amount of time that it's going to take for it to become transformative. And I think we're doing that with AI today. The perfect example, I wrote a paper in 1995, I'm giving away my age now, about how mobile phones were going to become ubiquitous. It was 1995, it was 12 years before the first iPhone. And I said they were going to become ubiquitous in just 5 years. I was wrong. I was wrong about the timeline. I wasn't wrong about the impact. And so I think it's going to be the same with AI. We all think that it's going to massively transform business in the next couple of years. I think it's going to take a little longer than that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's also a transformation and not a fad. In Washington State, Microsoft 2 weeks ago committed to spend millions of dollars training our teachers, our nonprofits, and K-12 on the use of AI. So when I think about the level of investments into AI that we're going to see, I think we're going to continue to have those that are, I'm going to say, more mature in our profession, have to continue to learn about these different tools that when I think about the kids nowadays, they're they're not going to walk into a world as a grown-up where AI is not embedded through every part of their lives in a way that we didn't have to when we started our careers. So to me, that's why I think it's not a fad and it's a transformation, because I think about it's not just, wearing glittery shoes or something that's a fad. It's about how it's embedded in the very fabric of our education going forward. And at that point, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle.
So, uniformity here, this is transformative. I wonder when and how we get to the space where we can see where it's going to take us. And I want to connect this panel to the very last panel that was on this stage last night for CoMotion. It was a fantastic panel on multimodal micromobility paratransit. And so you had this great panel of transit agencies, bicycle advocates, an NPO leader. And the last question their moderator asked them was, what's next for your industry? And everyone, the bicycle manufacturer, the MPO director, they all said AI, AI. Okay, so do we sometimes get ourselves in the place where, and this was a phrase that I think Kevin coined, are we putting the solution before the problem? Do we see that happening with, and we've been joking about it up here, AI is going to solve everything. How do we guard against putting the solution before the problem?
I think they need to, we've identified 80 pilots that people want. Now, we are not going to do 80 pilots. We'll barely do 8, because the success of pilots is only 25% right now. So we've got a long way to go in the industry. But I think that it comes back to the same thing that we always ask, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And I'm just doing it very simply. I mean, is it really going to move the needle, or is it really going to solve a pain point? But being very deliberate and manage scope so that it's not a runaway train, I can say that. Yeah, okay. Well, you talked about cyber threats. So.
Yeah, I was really thinking about your point, Randy, about what problem are we trying to solve. So I'm actually going to use an example from the city of Bellevue, where I was a council member for more than 7 years. So the city of Bellevue in Washington, if you haven't been, every one of our intersections are adaptive, meaning that it pulls data. There's a central control room that makes adjustments in real time, and then there is somebody that keeps an eye on it. But that technology has been in place in the city of Bellevue. I believe the last of the intersections was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, became adaptive. And what that meant was there was a lot of data and video analytics that were available as part of that. So I give you that example because this is actually one where the technology is actually accelerating what the city's been trying to do around transportation safety. So now some of the pilots have been around how do we actually sense and make adjustments. So there are a couple of intersections in downtown Bellevue where the AI is sensing when a pedestrian is only halfway across the crosswalk and needs a little bit more time in the walk signal so they don't get hit by a car or have to run across and fall down and hurt themselves. So I give that example because I think there are a lot of times where we have a dream about what we want to do, but the technology isn't really there for us to move forward to that next step. So how do we think about how AI can be helpful in that space? And we actually, in the town of Bothell, which is not that far north of where Bellevue is, we have IonQ that's making quantum computing chips. So when I think about the commercialization of quantum computing, that helps us to make the AI data analytics crunch even faster. I think some of the things we didn't think was possible about being able to take data and help make adjustments and decision in real time, that those are the things we need to dream about that we didn't think was possible. That, again, like, my staff talked about, right, making the invisible visible, making the impossible possible.
I just want to add too, to what you're saying. We did a pilot which is now in production for public safety because everybody has this problem with copper wire being stolen, right? And so we had that problem, and we deployed this technology with cameras and the AI, and it was very hard to arrest those people, right? They did 30 arrests this month, and it was unbelievable. I mean, that is transformative. And now the word is getting out like, Big Brother's watching you. You better not, try and steal this copper wire. But I think when you really have a specific business problem that you're trying to address, this is very powerful.
You just almost brought us back to data privacy or to personal privacy, right? And Janice, you had brought that up previously. I said we'd get back to it. How are you thinking about privacy now when you're balancing out the benefits we can gain, safety benefits, commercial benefits, and yet there is still the privacy issue to tackle? Tell us what policies or approaches you have on that front.
So I want to say at Metrolink, one of the good things that we already had in place was a good data privacy policy. And the truth is, this is one of the things for which we have a solution for already. We just have to apply it to the data that's used for AI. So if your organization already has a strong data privacy policy, all you got to do is apply it properly to AI. If your organization does not have a strong data privacy policy, you need one because the risks get higher when you're dealing with AI as opposed to just the straight release of data. Because that data can be ingested, transformed, and find its way out to the public in other ways when you're using AI.
Ditto. Absolutely ditto. It's interesting. I'm actually going to talk more about my state legislative role because one of the things we were talking about is, do you actually need new rules for data privacy, consumer protection? Or is it actually making sure that those same rules apply to whatever tools we make the choice to use? Because we already have data privacy. We already have things around the fact that, you're not supposed to fake being someone else or whatnot. So how do we actually make sure that whichever tools we're using, whether it's today, 2 years ago, or 5 years from now, that we are not changing the level of protection, data privacy, consumer protection that exist already, and that we're not adding things unintentionally that actually isn't needed, which may actually create more ambiguity than it solves.
I would agree with both of you guys. We do have data privacy. Almost every organization does. And I don't think we need more. I think we just need to make sure people understand how that applies. And then if you put your public safety lens on, you can't just go like to the city of Bellevue and say, turn off your cameras, because I didn't sign up for my, whatever, or the airport or whatever. So we opt in because of certain things.
So you've all mentioned the strength of policy on this front. So what other pieces of policy are important for us or that you might be using at your agencies as we get into greater uses of AI?
Two things, both tied to the responsible use of AI. Transparency. So if you're using AI, that should be you should share that. And then related to something Janice was saying earlier about the growth of agentic AI and agentic AI making decisions for us, you've got to keep the human in the middle. And I think it'll be a long time before we are able to turn AI agents over to actually making decisions for us. I think that organizations that do that are playing with fire and they're going to get burned. So your policies need to clearly state that the human needs to stay in the middle, can review the output that comes from the AI agent, but the human is the person that puts forth that, make sure that everybody understands the source of what they're putting forth, and make sure that the data or the decisions are accurate and appropriate before exposing them to the public.
I'd also say that every organization now has a point of view on what tool they're going to be using for the mass AI stuff, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Copilot. It's to ensure that the people in your organization are using the one that you sanctioned, and not going say, I know, I really like ChatGPT better, so I'm just going to, go and put my data in there, and nobody even knows where it's going and what it's doing. So it's similar to other technologies that we've had before, but it's really, I guess, the enforcement of the policy, that this is what you're going to use for this, and adhere to it. I mean, we've all heard the story last year, I think it was last year or a year and a half ago, when a group of developers put their code out into ChatGPT, and what the ramifications of that were was very negative for the company, and they lost stock price, and their developers just didn't know it went into, mass distribution, and that was code that was proprietary to that organization. So that's why these rules exist. That's why, your responsible use of AI includes your responsible use of the tool for AI, to incorporate that.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. The only thing I would add that you guys brought up earlier is making sure that training and awareness happens, and that we are empowering or creating space for our staff to take that training. And I say that because how many of you get flooded with emails in your email inbox, and then after a while you're chasing your staff to take their training? Because it's not that they don't care about getting trained, but when you have 12 things to do and you only have so many hours in a day, and we're trying to get construction built and contractors paid and issues to resolve, they're not necessarily going to reach into that. And I will say that for the port, we are using the government version of the Copilot from Microsoft, and making sure that the staff knows that things that you're creating that is not for public consumption, put in Copilot. Anything else that ChatGPT is a publicly facing tool, and so anything that goes out there. But I will say that, especially with a lot of our folks out in the field, they're not necessarily paying attention to all of the stuff that we're necessarily talking about back in the office. So how do we walk alongside our staff so that they actually understand versus we just told you had to take training. If you didn't take it, that's on you and not us.
Great. Okay, well, I hope you can see that this is a very conversational group, and we wanted to spend more than just the last 3 minutes of time for your questions. We really want to hear from you. But before I jump out into the audience with the mic, I wanted to ask my last question, which is, what question did I not ask that you wanted to answer? What topic have we not discussed yet that is important when we're talking about applying AI in our space, which is in the transportation space?
I think we had a conversation about the importance of good data when training AI, and so you didn't really ask that question. And I've been wanting to share this old acronym for a little while, actually. So does anybody remember the acronym GIGO? GIGO, right? Yeah, for the old folks out there.
Good in, good out?
No, garbage in, garbage out. Yes. It applies here also, right? That's why it's important data hygiene is important when you're using this data to train your agents, right?
I was going to say data also, so.
I think it is data. You know, what I was going to add is definition. Having common, consistent definition is important because I do think that over time, each of us, even within the public sector, we have our own definition of various things. And after a while, people move around, right? We are seeing more migration of our staff to different companies. If we don't have common definitions, the data is a little bit of garbled because we actually can't coalesce and pull them together from an interoperability standpoint.
One more too, you know.
Sure.
This Gen AI, it can't create something from nothing. And I think that concept people don't get. You know, and it could be in any area, but it has to start with something. I mean, Gen AI started with ingesting things from the internet. It started that way. So people need to understand it's not like you're an artist and you've got a blank piece of paper and something comes out of your brain and you start drawing. I don't draw, by the way. Just trying to educate, again, that concept.
All right, thank you. So sticking with this notion of what did we not ask? What have we not discussed that you want to hear about? I'm heading towards you all. Who has a question here for the panel? Yeah, okay, yes, keep the hands up. I'll come around.
Oh, sure. Hi, it seems like each model has their own training data. And I was just wondering, is there a single platform for AI, or is there like a plan to develop one where multiple providers can talk and learn from each other?
I don't believe that's happening in the industry today, but what I will say is that I believe that most of the platforms that are out there today start with base training data that comes from the internet, just like all of them. What may distinguish the different platforms is what additional data they use to train those models. And so certain agents are maybe, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very purpose-built. And they're purpose-built not because the heuristics are different, but it's because they've been trained specifically on data for a particular purpose. Does that make sense? Generative AI, for lack of a better term, is very, very complicated pattern matching, is what it really is. And so the more data you feed into a model, the better it gets at matching certain patterns. And so most of these agents are trained on a similar set of data that they get from the internet.
Yeah, this one is on training again. I'm just curious. The first thing that I think about when I want to learn something, I jump to YouTube, right? Is there a vendor? Is there some sort of agency that is, I guess, offers a very robust kind of training for an organization? I'm with a nonprofit, so I'm thinking about a nonprofit and how I can get folks trained within the agency.
Well, for us, I developed the training for our staff, and I developed it for our staff because I felt like we knew our audience best. And so we knew how to build a set of materials that would help first give them a foundation and understanding of what AI is, and then kind of teach them best practices. And so with that, what I say is online, it depends on what you're trying to learn. Are you trying to learn new strategic ways for applying AI? Where there are some great strategic AI programs for which you could learn from. I'm on the advisory board for the University of Colorado Springs Strategic AI program. That's a good one. There's many others that are good ones. If you're just looking on how to best use it, there's multiple prompt engineering training sessions. You could find them on YouTube. You can get them on LinkedIn Learning. There's lots of options.
Well, I was going to say that we have a monthly AI working group at the Port of Seattle, and then our ICT actually has these tech talks to help with, like, what is a good prompt? How do you show what different answers you might get based on which AI tool that you're using? And then I would say that, depending on which one you're using, because there's Copilot, there's Gemini, I can't remember, there's all these different ones. Each of them do offer their own training as well. That would be helpful. Happy to connect with you.
Other questions? All right.
Thank you. I'm going to double down on what Kevin said about the Gov AI Coalition. I think there's some really, really good resources there.
Janice said it first.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. And to the gentleman on my right that asked about training, there are resources out there. You don't have to join up. It's freely and publicly available on their site, so you can check that out too. I was going to ask, and I think Janice actually mentioned this a little bit on when you mentioned government Copilot usage in your agency. Is there one tool or platform or product that you're finding is working within your agency?
I would say not necessarily. I think that each of the agencies, depending on where they are, use different tools. And what I mean by that is the Port of Seattle, I think, has leaned into more of the Microsoft products over the years. And so it was a natural next step to use the Copilot. I will say that when I was on the National League of Cities AI task force, we were sponsored, hosted by Google, so a lot more of those examples were Google-based Gemini products. So it really depends on, I would say, what region you're in and what your agency is more comfortable with, because they all, sell their product as the best one. But I think it's really more of what your own staff is used to using. We pivoted during COVID to Microsoft Teams really, really rapidly because, as you can imagine, SeaTac Airport is an essential facility, so we never actually stopped, even though we didn't have rules about how to even operate.
I'll say that Copilot came with our, subscription, so that's what we have sanctioned. However, we are getting a lot of feedback that they want to use ChatGPT. So a lot of feedback. So we may be reevaluating this.
So I'm going to say short answer is no. In the testing that we're doing for contract review, procurement reviews, we're using ChatGPT agents and Copilot agents, and we're seeing vastly different results between the two. So the answer is no. There isn't one tool. But you got to try them all out and find the one that works best for the purpose, for the problem that you're trying to solve.
Hey, more questions. All right, I'll come around this way.
Oh, thank you. So I have a question about, so how is the general AI is affecting your current near future workflow for employees, and how will that affect for example, HR recruiting progress that is happening at your agencies or company? Thank you.
We haven't put specifically, unless it's an AI role, we haven't put specifically in there AI per se. But during the interview process, we incorporate questions of that nature, depending on what the role is. And I'm also trying to educate our HR department so that they can ask questions that would be more in line with, understanding, its capabilities, because they like to do the pre-screening. So as much as I can educate the HR department, although we call it people and culture, the better candidates that we get for specific roles.
Yeah, and I would say, I wonder if you're also asking about the impact of AI in the workforce. And I would say that from that standpoint, I'm actually just going to speak more from the engineering department standpoint. So more than a dozen years ago, I had this dream about the single source of truth and data. And so one of the things we were doing was changing the staff that used to be document control specialists, where the thing they were doing was, scanning hard copies, dumping it into our system, and actually changing their job description so that as we use tools that automate those more routine, mundane tasks, that they were able to be more of an assistant to our construction management team. And I will say this, how many of you in your jobs are able to do every single thing that you want to do? Right, so what we're actually trying to get to is a place where the more that the automation of some of the AI makes the work of our staff easier, then they can spend more time looking for those problems that are being able to be more predictive, more preventative. And again, I'm talking about more of the project delivery side where, sometimes when you don't have enough staff, you're really looking ahead over the next 2 to 3 week look ahead versus the 3 to 6 months from now, what are the issues you're going to run into? So I'm super excited that as we actually are able to get more of these things done, that we can actually look longer in the horizon to be a lot more preventative in our work.
Okay, any other questions? Maybe one more from the audience? Okay.
Hi, I'm Paroma from Steer. Question on AI adoption. So in organizations, right, like we all understand the benefit of AI, but adoption can look very different within an organization in between different departments or grade levels or whatever it is. So what are maybe some of the strategies that you're adopting to accelerate AI adoption?
I think this is like, when I'll use your cell phone example, when the cell phone came out, you have different generations in the workforce, so you have to adapt your strategy. People that are younger or people that are interested, they've been on ChatGPT and, they kind of know it and they don't really want to go to training, some of them. And then we have the flip side of people that have no clue what it is and really need more formal training. So I don't think it's any different really than what we've seen in the past in terms of introducing new technology and, becoming more efficient and understanding how to use it in your job. But I think that tailoring it to the particular audience is really critical.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but training and reinforcement, I think, are really, really important. And lastly, finding the problems that you can apply AI to solve. This is one of the reasons I'm really, really excited about embedding generative AI into our contract lifecycle management processes and using AI. The thing that AI is great at is words and language, right? And so that's what contracts are, and that's why I believe there's a gigantic benefit to really shorten the cycle time of processing contracts at our agency.
Amy, I want to thank you on behalf of my colleagues for moderating this panel.
Wait a minute, I do the closing.
Oh, and I was actually just going to add, really meeting the staff where they are, because we've all seen that adoption curve, right? There are the kind of brave adopters, and then there's the laggards at the end, and recognizing that the more stress we put on staff that may already feel like they're overworked to learn one more piece of technology, so really creating space for them to learn, maybe find some buddies that are doing some co-learning together, and then some are better at learning through reading. Some really need that show and tell. And the more that we really lower the barrier of the multiple ways that people learn, that will, I think, go a long ways, because it is, for those that are not used to the space, it is very different and very scary. So actually really kind of lowering the temperature and creating that space for them.
Janice, Randy, Kevin, and audience, thank you so much for this collaborative learning about AI. Have a great rest of your day.